Hello, my name is Rebecca Rightnour. So this is my online presentation. So as you tell by the title, I'm going to talk about how advertising, how it's kind of gone wrong in the past couple of years, and how it has an effect. Kind of an overview. I want to talk about the portrayal it has on women, making them sex symbols, maybe violence that has resulted from these images, and then the different theories we talked about in class and how that connects, and then also how we can see this effect on children. So I first want to show the video because I kind of want to break it down and talk about that with the rest of the video. I'm going to show two 30-second clips of the same video, but so this lady, Jean Kilborn, she used to be a supermodel, and she has these videos called Killing Us Softly, and she basically breaks down these advertisements and how they've affected us, and she almost kind of makes fun of them, but she's actually really into it and just really has an opinion about it. And so here's the first clip.
We all grow up in a culture in which women's bodies are constantly turned into things, into objects. Here she's become the bottle of Michelob. In this ad, she becomes part of a video game. And this is everywhere, in all kinds of advertising. Women's bodies turned into things, into objects. Now, of course, this affects female self-esteem. It also does something even more insidious. It creates a climate in which there's widespread violence against women. I'm not at all saying that an ad like this directly causes violence. It's not that simple. But turning a human being into a thing is almost always the first step toward justifying violence against that person.
So here she talks about the first thing is how, this degrades women and how women try to imitate these things. And, I mean, clearly these just aren't ideal images. I mean, these women are definitely skinny, but they're made to look skinnier in these videos. It's impossible to look that way. They're turned into objects, and this just makes women feel really bad about themselves. The reason I put this quote, she said this early in the video, and it was a quote from Cindy Crawford, and she said, "I wish I looked like Cindy Crawford," which it's so true. The Cindy Crawford we see, she's a supermodel, airbrush, nowadays we have Photoshop and all this technology. And this is just like, women are these sex symbols, and they're made to, have big boobs, big butt, but tiny waist, and which is almost genetically impossible. And so, since they are degraded, that's how it links back, I think, to violence, because, she talks about how it's not exactly the direct link to violence, but how this is the first step, For the most part, the pictures we saw, we saw a video game, we saw a car, we saw beer, and for the most part, those are male-dominant objects. When you think about them, you think men, for the most part. And so this kind of violence is, men towards women, and it just... men see that these ads are degrading women, they're putting women down, and it makes men think that they can do that. They turn these women into objects and don't treat them like human beings. They treat them like they're an object and don't treat them the way that they should be. And the reason it appeals to them, we talked about, the common appeals that ads have towards men. This one I felt like with the car and, with beer and all that, it's more adventurous, it's fun, not necessarily like elegant or anything like that, like a wine would have. But it also, this goes down to younger men, and younger boys see these ads, and so whenever they see these ads, they think they can treat women this way, and it's just kind of this long cycle that just keeps going down. And so I think that these ads with the sex and the violence can definitely be directly related, and alcohol can sometimes be a factor. I mean, clearly there were alcohol advertisements, but sometimes the men drink the alcohol, which makes it worse. So some of the theories I think that directly relate that we've talked about is, one, the social comparison theory. I mean, the words in it, compare. These women compare themselves to these models and these ads, and, they see this stuff on TV and in the real world, and it's not real. It's not obtainable. It's not real, and they try to imitate it, and it's just not a thing, and these women are trying to do it, and I feel like this theory is proven just by this, And then the cultivation theory, they see these things on TV and, they think it's real and it's really not. And I just think those two theories are definitely a perfect example of how these advertisements are seen and how women try to act and be that way that they see, and, it's not really obtainable. Then last one, the social learning theory, I felt that one kind of goes more with the violence and the violence aspect of it, because these men see these women, like how these women are treated, and they try and model that behavior. They see that they're treated that way, they're going to treat them that way. They see they're portrayed that way, they're going to portray them that way. And that's just kind of, I think, three perfect prime examples that we talked about in class that go together. So here, okay, so the second clip I want to show, it kind of talks about more of like how this media and like these advertisements have an effect on younger kids, in the world and stuff. So let's watch watch that.
Everywhere we look, women's bodies turned into things and often just parts of things. And girls are getting the message these days so young that they need to be impossibly beautiful, hot, sexy, extremely thin, and they also get the message that they're going to fail, that there's no way to really achieve it. Girls tend to feel fine about themselves when they're 8, 9, 10 years old, but they hit adolescence and they hit a wall. And certainly part of this wall is this terrible emphasis on physical perfection.
Okay, so clearly there we see how this is targeted towards young girls. You know, we saw 2 of those pictures. I mean, those girls were prettier than me. They wore more makeup than me, and they were probably, what, like 9 years old. That's just crazy, and it's so unnatural. You know, we see shows like Toddlers and Tiaras, and, you know, it's not normal, and the women just really need to see how these advertisements are affecting these girls, and at such a young age, to having to try and be sexy. I mean, that's something you shouldn't have to worry about till, like, way later on, and I think that aspect can really have a direct link to how we talked about teen pregnancies are such, like, a high, like, problem right now. You know, the U.S. has the highest teen pregnancies. We talked about all those statistics, and, I mean, these advertisements could also be linked to that. You know, these girls are supposed to be trying to look sexy, and, you know, looking sexy can make them feel sexy, and that's just going to have a direct link to, like, higher teen pregnancies in the U.S. Also, one thing we talked about was obesity in class, and she actually later in the video talks about how these advertisements, you know, seeing how thin these women are and how, like, how skinny they are and how they need to try and look like that. Well, she talks about how anorexia and, you know, bulimic and trying to be bulimic and how that's a problem now. And, you know, little girls are trying to be skinny and trying to starve themselves to look like that. And to me, that's almost worse than obesity, just because, you know, they say you're at least fat and happy. But these girls are probably miserable because they're trying to be perfect and they don't need to be. But this whole thing, this reminded me of this Dove campaign that you really should go look at. You know, they have the whole Real Beauty thing. But recently they came out with this video that you need to go watch, and she talks about, they ask about a bunch of, like, 10 adults and 10 children. You know, if there was one thing you could change about your body, what would it be? And, you know, the adults, of course, said something like I would say, you know, oh, I wish I had a smaller nose. I wish my eyes were bigger. Oh, I wish my face was clearer. You know, I wish my face wasn't so fat. You know, very superficial things, you know, like most adults would say. And the kids came in, and the kids said things like, you know, what would you change about your body? And they're, like, sitting there thinking, and they say, like, I would have a mermaid tail. Oh, I would have dragon wings. And, you know, just super creative and fun things that, you know, nowadays, like, you would never say that. You know, it's just, and it's like, where does that end? Where does that thinking of their bodies and, you know, the fact that they're, you know, beautiful in their own skin, when does that leave them? And with these advertisements, that's going to take that away from them at a younger and younger age. So that's just definitely, I think, a problem. So I feel like just one thing you really need to take away from, like, her video, like, if you watch the whole Killing Us Softly video, it's actually really, like, it's really deep, and it really, like, makes you realize that when you see these media effects, they're not normal. Like, these media images, they really shouldn't be displayed. But instead of trying to change the media, you know, they're not going to change. They're going to keep having all these super skinny models, you know, that's going to take forever. But you just need to change the way you look at the media and how it affects you. You know, you sit there and don't be like, oh, I need to look like her. Oh, I need to be that skinny. You know, you just know, you know, not everybody's going to be that way. And just, we need to learn that and be able to analyze those effects and make sure that it just doesn't let us affect us in a negative way. And so, yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.